Hey, Jack, what's a worse song, this or the Open, the Game Time Open at 7 o'clock? It's about to go down.
This one is like an interpolation of a real song, so I give Mr. Ryda a point for originality, I guess.
Okay. I like it, though. It's Cowboys, and it's
they bring
positive.
the noise, that's true.
I mean, the Cowboys, we know they're on a 30-year run of no championships, but I don't know where this will go. I'm having fun with the idea. I'm driving the bandwagon of a Cowboys-Texans Super Bowl in 2027. But I am sensing, having covered this team, all the way back to my days as a student at St. Edward's University, Jack, when the Cowboys were having training camp in South Austin there from 90 to 91 to 95 and winning Super Bowls. And you Cowboys fans can tell me if I'm wrong. And I'm sensing a change in Jerry Jones, a good one. Like, he's still doing his thing, but let me just say, because we're going to introduce and hear from Christian Parker, the new defensive coordinator. But let me just paint the picture. You had a press conference yesterday, Jack. Well, coming off of a job search in which, by all accounts, Jerry Jones let Brian Schottenheimer hire the defensive coordinator. What do you know? Novel. Stayed out of the way. Because remember, go back to the press conference when at the end of the year where Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones and somebody asked about, and this was the press conference to announce that Matt Eberflus had been fired as the DC. And somebody said, will Brian Schottenheimer have a say in this hire? And what did Jerry say when he said, I'm like Venezuela, I'm in control?
Yeah, I'm in control.
You went to the Donald Trump quip. But that was Jerry Jones being Jerry Jones. But if you go and you behind the scenes, it was Brian Schottenheimer running this process, an exhaustive coaching search, up to 9 interviews with 9 different, top candidates, much like he did last year when he built the offensive staff. And it landed on Christian Parker. And then so yesterday you have this press conference, Jack, and you know who's not there? Jerry Jones.
Mm-hmm.
It was Brian Schottenheimer sitting at the table with his new defensive coordinator.
I think that's significant.
Yeah. And it's novel. It's new for a Cowboys team. And you Cowboys fans can you've seen it. It's almost always Jerry and Steven, and then Brian Schottenheimer sits over there and doesn't say much, usually in these press conferences, right? Well, let's hear from Brian Schottenheimer on what stood out about Christian Parker through the job search and why he became the choice among all of the candidates for the job.
The way he carries himself, he's wise beyond his years. I mean this, he's convicted. I did tell him that I was a coordinator at 32 years old. He's 34, so he's been slacking. I'm a little disappointed that, I had to beat him by 2 years. But I say that in jest because, he's been preparing for this for the last 4 or 5 years. When you're designing defense, you're the pass game coordinator on defense. You're basically involved in calling third downs and giving those things. And I say it because it's real. He was the last Zoom that we did, and as he started talking, it wasn't just him talking about his watches and his shoe game. He's got a serious shoe game. Yeah, he got a shoe room. You guys can write about that. He's got a shoe room. Man, every time we talk, we just would get off a call or get off the Zoom and get off the interview, just be like, damn, I want more of that. And I think his ability to develop players is very obvious. You look at what he did in Denver, involved with Surtain, and you look at what they did in Philadelphia, obviously with Cooper DeJean and Mitchell and guys like that. He's done it. And ton of respect for Vic Fangio. He's cut his teeth under Vic, but he's not Vic. He's got his own convictions and beliefs, and that's what I love about the guy.
All right, so there you go. Good shoe game, too. But then you ask Christian Parker, Jack. He's only 34 years old, youngest coordinator in the league now.
There you go.
But he had talking about conviction, he had no doubt that he's ready for this overhaul of the Cowboys defense, which needs a lot of work.
Christian, Todd Archer with ESPN. How ready are you for this?
I'm ready.
Where does the confidence come from that you know you're ready to handle it?
I think confidence comes from preparation, and I think that I've been able to learn from the right people. So I think that when you've been involved with different people along my journey that I've learned under as head coaches and defensive coordinators, number one, and then the diversity of scheme that I've been involved with. And then you kind of become accustomed to what you're comfortable with in your own ideas. You like certain things, you don't like certain things, what will work, what won't work. I think as you kind of get involved with different people, you kind of form your own identity. So when you have that opportunity, you know what you want to do. And I've kind of gone through that process internally for a great deal of my career. So I've prepared as much as I possibly can at this moment.
All right. So, and again, there's players and then there's coaches, right? And you got to teach them. And, I think good organizations still develop their players. It's not a finished product. And you heard Brian Schottenheimer cite that with Christian Parker, that in Denver, yes, you had Patrick Surtain and young, really good young defensive backs, but they developed. They got better. Then he went to, Philadelphia, knew they had to overhaul their defense. And I take the Philadelphia thing. The thing that was keeping the Eagles' defense from succeeding was their secondary. Well, they drafted Quinyon Mitchell in the first round, Cooper DeJean in the second round, but they had to play immediately, and they had to be ready to play. And this was the guy in charge of helping get them ready, which is the Cowboys going to be their task. They've got 2 picks in the first round. They could take 2 defensive backs. So they'll almost certainly take 2
defensive
players.
Yeah.
And this guy's got to coach them up. And I thought this was good, too. What about teaching at the NFL level, especially when you get young guys like the Cowboys are going to have on defense?
Student, first and foremost,
Here he is.
Your job is teaching. What do you think makes a good teacher?
I think you have to know the student first and foremost. You have to know who you're talking to. What might hit one player's brain is going to hit different than another. So being thorough and being detailed, being very clear and concise in terms of your messaging, and when to correct, when not to correct. Sometimes players got to touch the stove. You just want to do it in a controlled environment. But just how to do that, the diversity of teaching, whether it's on the field, in the meeting room, Kahoot quizzes, physical quizzes, showing them video examples, having them teach in front of a room. There's so many different ways that you can kind of get in the weeds of teaching: scheme, technique, situational awareness, and really you just want to expose players to as many different examples, because it's going to hit everybody differently in terms of how they're able to learn that.
All right, learn your players first and then teach them. Cowboy fans will not disagree with this. He said, learning and executing scheme and technique. Cowboys were really bad at that last year on defense. Really bad.
Very.
As we've said, I don't know that there was a team I've ever seen in NFL football that had more wide-open wide receivers. Like the entire TV screen, there's not a defender near it on a play. And that happened over and over last year for the Dallas Cowboys. But maybe for Cowboy fans, and we'll all learn, he's 34, but it seems like he and Shotty already have a real good rapport. But how about this? This is where we talk about maybe things changing, Jack, behind the scenes. When Christian Parker was asked, what gives you the idea that this is the right place and the right time, and leaving Philadelphia, who just won a Super Bowl. And there's been talk, Jack, in Philadelphia, that maybe the alignment isn't there right now, that there's Nick Sirianni's butting heads with people. And here is Christian Parker saying that the alignment within the Cowboys building was something that appealed to him, with Brian Schottenheimer now in charge.
We started the process. You could tell there was an aligned vision for what they wanted in the position, where we wanted to go forward. Obviously, a great deal of respect for not only the organization, but the players involved on the team, having been in division for the past 2 years and having different times going against them. Significant offensive firepower, stayed up a lot of late nights trying to prepare for. So it always helps when you have a franchise quarterback and offensive skill players on that side of the ball that can control the game for you. But I think the biggest thing was just the alignment. You could feel from everybody in the building during those interactions that there was a shared vision involved, and people wanted to move forward in the right direction.
Well, and then if that's Brian Schottenheimer's creating that, then I'm a fan, because that's always, that's the old Steve Jobs Apple mantra. What is leadership? The definition of leadership: creating shared vision. That really is, at the end of the day, whether you like the boss or not, but if everybody in the building is pushing in the same direction and has the same message and understanding of the message, that's shared vision. And that typically leads to great things. And it feels like Brian Schottenheimer's creating that. Because it didn't feel like they had a shared vision last year, offense to defense. We'll see if Brian Schottenheimer, given the opportunity by Jerry Jones, can do that.
I think that's huge. How often in the last 30 years even have we seen true alignment from top to bottom with Dallas? The best thing Jerry Jones can do as a GM is let everybody do their job. And it seemed like at the beginning of last season he wasn't letting Brian Schottenheimer do that. And now it seems to be kind of shifting in another direction, because you bring in Matt Eberflus. I think Matt Eberflus knows defense, but coming off getting fired by the Bears, he puts up the worst defense in the league last season. Dude's just wide open all the way down the field, made Bryce Young look like Alabama Bryce Young. Well, and now I think you're going in a different direction, and I think Brian Schottenheimer's actually in charge of it. I think that's huge.
It's good for the long haul, but again, this is going to be the fourth defensive coordinator in 4 years.
Yeah.
And it's a new scheme. He said we're going from a 4-3 to a 3-4, but it's going to be multiple. So again, this is the bad side for Jerry Jones. You keep bouncing back and forth after Dan Quinn left. You got to solidify this, but it feels like that's what Brian Schottenheimer wants, is these coaches for the long haul. And we'll hear one more coming up on really what I think is a winning quote if you're a fan of Brian Schottenheimer and the direction it's going. It's not an easy fix, though. The Cowboys do have 2 first-round picks, so let's look at this, Jack. 12-20. Dallas will have a full contingent now of Christian Parker and his staff. They'll be headed to Indianapolis. You know they're going to be scouring the scouting combine next week, looking for the top defensive players on the board. Could that include who's going to be there at 12, Jack? Is that, does David Bailey out of Texas Tech slide that far? Probably not, right? Arvell Reese out of Ohio State? Probably not. Reuben Bain from Miami, could he be there? Or, are you looking in the secondary? I think Cowboy fans and Cowboys, the war room would do cartwheels if Caleb Downs from Ohio State was still there. But you know what, Jack? I don't think Caleb Downs gets past the Giants at 5. I know that everybody's penciling in.
Yeah.
John Harbaugh has been in Baltimore and around Baltimore with guys like Ed Reed, guy like, who's the Notre Dame kid? Kyle Hamilton, that is just an elite safety, right? The ever-changing NFL where a safety is now as important as any player, like a versatile safety who can play linebacker at times, can play the run, can play the pass, can cover tight ends. That's Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore when they had the number one defense. We've talked about what Seattle did this year.
Yeah.
I think if you're John Harbaugh, you have needs, but I think Caleb Downs would be too good to pass up to anchor your defense, anchor your back end. So I would take that off the board if I'm the Cowboys. But if he's there, you run the card up for Caleb Downs out of Ohio State by way of Alabama, elite player. He's one of those guys to me that just is a can't-miss dude. But he runs your whole defense at that point from the back end. I like that. But again, other guys you can see, maybe people have talked about Sonny Styles, the Ohio State linebacker, could be that pick at 12. But let's also say this, before the draft, there'll be free agency. And we know the Cowboys have George Pickens that they've got to deal with. Is it a franchise tag and a trade? We've talked about Max Crosby from the Raiders. But how about this? Bengals edge rusher Trey Hendrickson. I know he's 31 years old. Would that do anything for you? Maybe the top free agent pass rusher? Or, the team that's going to become the Goodwill team, like the thrift store, is the Miami Dolphins.
Right.
They released Bradley Chubb. He's only 29. I think he's still a good player. He's just on a bad team.
If you can get him on a team-friendly deal, especially. Well, I think some of the injuries that he's had have kind of zapped a little bit of that athleticism that he was known for in Denver and stuff, but
I think he at least kicked the tires.
Exactly.
You start with Max Crosby. That's the home run.
You try it out. And that's the other thing with the Cowboys at 12. If you want a DB there and 3 defensive backs have been taken off the board, maybe you trade out of it. Maybe that's where you go and try and get Max Crosby, because we know it's a weird draft.
It is. Well, and Cowboys are in a weird place. They have a new defense coordinator, but they also are in a win-now mode. They want to win with Dak Prescott this year or next year.
They need to.
And so how about this? Who's maybe available? Here's a report that's out that as many as 5 teams have talked to the Dolphins about the 5-time Pro Bowl safety Minkah Fitzpatrick. Remember they traded for him from Pittsburgh? That guy can still play. He's another Alabama safety, right? That's the kind of guy that could come in and help Christian Parker install this. He's like a coach on the field. And you're not going to get Caleb Downs at 12, I don't think, but Minkah Fitzpatrick will be a nice player. And how about this one? Daniel Jeremiah, who you're going to see a lot next week at the Combine from NFL Network. He suggested in his mock draft recently that with the Cowboys, I've talked about trading the 20th pick for Max Crosby, but he says, would you consider trading the 20th pick to Kansas City for Pro Bowl cornerback Trent McDuffie? Because Trent McDuffie is in the final year of his rookie deal, and there's the Chiefs just worked some cap space magic with Patrick Mahomes to clear up some $40 million plus in cap space, but there's a thought they can't afford Trent McDuffie on the defensive side. They've got too many needs in Kansas City. Would they trade to acquire a young player like a pick 20? Because remember, the Chiefs are kind of in a gap mode here, right? They're Patrick Mahomes, can he be healthy by next year? Who knows? Is Travis Kelce going to retire or play or not? We don't know. And it kind of feels like next year is kind of a retool year for the Kansas City Chiefs. So would you trade Trent McDuffie to a team like the Cowboys who want a walk-in starter at corner? And Trent McDuffie is that dude. That would be.
Oh, he's very, very
And if
good.
you could get Deron Bland back to something close to what he was before the series of injuries, well, then you got something to work with.
Yeah, and he's CB2 now.
Yeah, you get involved in a Minkah Fitzpatrick trade. So again, Trent McDuffie's a name to watch. So this will be the next thing, right? Where the Cowboys go for players, because it's a Jimmy's and Joe's league. Got to have players. And the Cowboys, it's not just coaching.
Players.
It's not just coaching on the defense. It was players. But they have a nice building block with Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark up front. By the way, there is talk that the Cowboys could trade Kenny Clark. How about that? Can you imagine? Because in addition to they acquired Kenny Clark in the Micah Parsons trade, then acquired Quinnen Williams from the Jets, who's going to be the anchor there. They also re-signed Osi Odigizua. That's a lot of money that they're paying at defensive tackle when they have other needs. So there's kind of talk that maybe they could move Kenny Clark for something, especially in the secondary or somewhere else, but just keep an eye on that. But here's the final clip I wanted to play here in our A block, brought to you by Apple Leasing. This is why I think fans are really liking Brian Schottenheimer. Listen to him. This is kind of a winning clip about what Brian Schottenheimer, the influence he is having on the locker room, the alignment that we just talked about.
Is the interview process the first time you guys have ever met?
No, we met when we had joint practice when I was in Denver in 2022. There was like a little coaches mixer at Ocean Prime out there in the Denver Tech area. We met real quick.
See how smart he is? I wouldn't remember that.
Yeah, we met real quick. But that was a just quick handshake introduction. There was a bunch of other people around during that time, but actually having conversation and talking football and everything else. This process was the first time.
And you guys know this with me. Like, this is a name that I've had in my notebook for the last couple of years. People just kept talking about this guy from Denver and Green Bay originally, but Denver and then in Philadelphia, and so he was a name that I'd been, hearing a lot about for a long time. No different than Clayton Adams, in terms of, hey, if you ever get a shot, these would be names that you would be intelligent and smart to talk to.
All right, so there you go. And that's what I'm talking about, right? Jerry Jones covering him for 35 years. Jack, this guy makes the hires. Brian Schottenheimer hired this coach, found him. He had never worked with him before. They met at a steakhouse in 2022, and Christian Parker remembers it. Brian Schottenheimer doesn't.
Yeah.
And this was a Brian Schottenheimer hire. And I think that's probably a great thing for Dallas Cowboys fans, that there's going to be alignment between the coaches. He got to select the coach, not told by who the coach is going to be, which Jerry Jones has done many times. And feels like Jerry's staying out of the way of this thing. I like it. I don't know if it's going to solve all the problems, but it's a good first step.
I think it's a great idea not to hire a buddy. We see that all the time. It seems like a Jerry thing to do. Jerry likes to bring in his guys, but Schottenheimer and Parker, you said, didn't even know each other. Look at Kevin Patullo and the Philadelphia Eagles. Nick Sirianni brought in his buddy. Parker decides, I'm leaving that thing to go be the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, people in all fields hire people they're comfortable with.
Right.
And
it's all business now.
And they don't turn over rocks all the time to find the best candidate. Who's the top candidate? And
if the Cowboys are going to be all business, have we ever seen that in the last?
That's what I'm saying. No, if it's
since
run,
the 90s,
if Jerry Jones is actually stepping aside and letting the coach run the locker room, run the coaching
do their
staff,
jobs,
and let them, that's a really good sign. We'll see where it goes, but not to get the, what do we call it? Jerry Jones selling hope. The hopium, not to get the hopium rised before we see what they do in free agency and doing the draft. This is better so far than it. Remember, because 2 years ago in the offseason, Jerry was just mad and didn't sign anybody and wasn't, left Mike McCarthy dangling after the Packers lost. Last year was the Micah mess and everything, and Jerry was front and center. Right now, Brian Schottenheimer is front and center on all of this, which is a good thing.
Analyze the events that happen in the moment and as they come. And right now, it seems like Brian Schottenheimer is the man in charge of at least this part of it. We'll see what free agency looks like. And it looks like they kind of have a pecking order established, and they're aligned at the top and aligned towards the bottom.
Well, and if the alignment continues, that means that Brian Schottenheimer and Christian Parker will build the staff of defensive assistants, hire the best people there.
They'll know what they want in free agency.
And then they'll work with Will McClay on the draft board. Like, what type of players are we wanting for this scheme? What's going to fit what our vision is for our defense, just like we did for our offense last year. I like it.